Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Google Gemini Pro, a developer's overview. My name is Matt Brown, and I'll be your host today. Before we begin, just a few logistical reminders. Today's discussion is being recorded, and you're currently in a listen-only mode. You can submit questions throughout the session using the Q&A functionality in the lower section of your Zoom console. This is your first time joining a SingleStore webinar. Heads up that we present regular webinars demoing data and AI use cases. And we will be taking a short 3-week break over the holidays since so many folks are going to be out of the office or traveling. And then we will be coming back on January 8th to present our next webinar. So if you click to the next slide, you'll be able to see that that is how to build a technical support AI chatbot with OpenAI. We get a lot of questions about how to achieve real-time retrieval augmented generation, or the idea of empowering your own chatbot on your own data or your own documents. This sounds interesting to you. You can RSVP right now. There's a tiny URL on your screen, tiny URL tech support chatbot webinar. I'll put that link in the chat in a little bit. You can also take a photo or screenshot of this screen to get that QR code. That'll take you to the same place, and I hope to see you in the new year. Back to today's topic. We have some fantastic experts who are part of this webinar who have a strong grasp of the technologies involved and are ready to answer your questions. So feel free to bring on your questions throughout the content. We'll try to get to as many of them interactively as we can. There's several that will flag for the live Q&A at the end of today's session after the demo. And if we don't get to anything, we'll try to email you to make sure there are no unanswered questions. We'd also love for you to try out the technology that we're going to be showing today. If you click to the next link, you'll see that we're offering a promotion today. Anyone who tries out this today will be entered for a chance to win new AirPods Pro. These are the latest, the new Pros that were released. All you need to do is click the link that's on your screen. It's the tiny URL Gemini Pro raffle. I'll put that link in the chat in a little bit. You can also scan a QR code, take a photo or screenshot of that. That'll take you to the same place. In order to participate, all you need to do is visit that link and log in. SingleStore has a free trial if you're a new user. I've been using our free trial for over 2 years now. It's great. I can use demos on it. It kind of depends, on the resources used. You can, use it up faster, obviously, if you're a heavy resource user. But for my purposes, I've used it for a long time. Or you can log into an existing account if you're already a customer at SingleStore, or if you have an ongoing trial, that's all fine too. We will check the folks who log in today, and we will announce the winner of the AirPods by the end of today's session. Let me introduce our speakers. I'll go first. My name is Matt Brown. As I mentioned, I'm the head of global growth at SingleStore DB. I have the pleasure of organizing these weekly AI webinars that show the world what's possible with a general purpose database that has vector capabilities. So SingleStore has upcoming webinars on building technical support chatbots, building stock market AI advisors. We have some webinars coming up on Llama 2 versus Mistral from Hugging Face. And a lot more. So feel free to follow along. I also post a lot on LinkedIn about these upcoming webinars, so you're welcome to connect with me there if you prefer, if you'd like to hear about some of those upcoming webinars. And then, of course, the real star of our show is Ayush Pai. Ayush is a computer science student at Georgia Tech. I found him online after he created that viral AI basketball referee demo, which was super cool. Partnered with him on a few projects, demoing the power of SingleStore DB for AI use cases since then. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to show us today and his demo. But quickly, before we get to that, I'm going to give a very short introduction to what is SingleStore DB and why do we call it the perfect solution for fast AI use cases. Well, SingleStore is a distributed relational database, SQL database that can handle both transactions and analytics in the same engine. Years ago, this was great for the high power and data intensive applications that critically needed both scale and speed. The example we like to use is the Uber app, Uber customer of SingleStore. You can imagine when you open the Uber app, there's a lot of things going on. There's hundreds or thousands of users online. In your region, there's also drivers online. Everyone's being tracked from a geospatial standpoint. And then there's also people that are, querying the database, looking for a ride, wondering what their fare will be, wondering what their ETA will be. And that moment is very important. If there's any sort of lag or delay in the user experience, riders will likely just abandon the app and go over to a competitor. So the application in that moment critically needs both scale and speed. The entire business depends on it. So that was SingleStore for years. Then back in 2017, something else happened. SingleStore has a lot of financial services customers. We're not allowed to mention all their names, but you can think of major global banks like top 5 and top 10 in the world. Speed and scale are very important to them, existentially important to them. One in particular, again, I'm not allowed to mention its name, but they pushed us at SingleStore, or MemSQL, as we were known at the time, to develop vector capabilities. We did. We further honed that capability over the past few years. Suddenly the AI boom arrived, which has been awesome for SingleStore. So now we've got the distributed MySQL compatible architecture. It can handle streaming data ingestion, transactions and analytics in the same engine, multimodal capabilities, think JSON, time series, full text, vector data. So think about this in this way. If you like MongoDB's simplicity of handling JSON documents, but you don't like the speed or performance with real-time analytics, SingleStore has an API for that. It's called the MongoDB API. It's called Kai. If you like the power of a data warehouse like Snowflake to handle large-scale BI analytics, but you don't like Snowflake's prices or Snowflake's speeds, SingleStore has you covered. If you like MySQL's familiar SQL syntax and cost, but you don't like MySQL's laggy performance at scale, SingleStore can handle that. So for all of these things, you sum it up in a sentence: speed, scale, multi-model support, SQL. SingleStore is the better option, we think, than cobbling together lots of different specialty databases. And architecturally, this diagram is very nice because it kind of showcases this concept of universal storage right there in the middle, OLTP and OLAP. Surrounding this, you have these technologies that we can connect with really easily. We have all these connectors that can be streaming data, maybe using something like Kafka. You see we've got Spark there. There's that Spark logo, Hadoop. And then at the bottom, you see SingleStore plays well on all 3 major cloud platforms: AWS, GCP, Azure. We also have on-premise as well. So hybrid options as you like. We have a Docker container. So that's kind of a nice low-risk way of trying this out. And finally, as we mentioned at the intro, SingleStore gives out $600 in free cloud credits to play with. Consider this. I think I mentioned this. I've been at SingleStore over 2 years. I've been using the same trial credits since I started. So, anyways, I think that brings us nicely to handing over things to Ayush to talk more about how SingleStore is a great option for AI applications. Ayush, take it away. You're on mute, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Matt, for that great introduction. For SingleStore, it's a really great application for any real-time AI applications, especially one that we'll be talking about today, which is Google Gemini. And as you all know, Google Gemini is Google's newest large language model that they released that's really heavily emphasized on their multimodal abilities. And that's kind of something with SingleStore that really excels with its multiple variations of different types of data types that can take. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but let's go into a brief introduction of what Google Gemini actually is. So these models are not just designed to work with text, such as some of the other large language models that we've seen, but they're also adept to really understand images and audio, and that truly makes them multimodal. Today, we'll focus on the Pro variant because that's what was released on December 13th. Google Gemini Pro really stands out for its flexibility and efficiency, two attributes that are really important in the fast-paced tech industry. It was completely trained on Google's state-of-the-art AI chips, such as the TPU V4 and the V5e. And these are the engines behind its remarkable performance. But what really makes Gemini so transformative today is its ability to do text generation, language translation, multimodal learning. And these capabilities are not just academic, they really have practical applications in a wide spectrum of fields that we'll be talking about today, from software development to creative arts to research, whatever you're trying to do. Gemini Pro and its multimodal abilities can really take your applications to the next level. So let's turn our attention to the Google Gemini Nano, which is really the streamlined variant of Google's LLM. That's really been optimized for agility and really efficiency here. So in essence of AI, it's really distilled into a sleek, mobile-friendly package with kind of two sizes, right? Google decided they wanted to have two of these Nano sizes, and Nano 1 has 1.8 billion parameters that it's been trained on. Nano 2 has around 3.25 billion parameters. These models are really providing a spectrum of power that can power like various mobile demands while really ensuring the integrity of performance and computational feasibility. Think about how you could use these applications of these large language models, but kind of more broken down into a mobile application where you don't have as much compute power as maybe like an onboard GPU, but you can still be using Google's Nano models here that can really power some really cool applications as well on device. So Google Gemini Nano is really a testament to Google's commitment to really make accessible and make AI accessible and portable. It's really meticulously engineered to integrate with mobile devices, fundamentally transforming them into AI powerhouses. And this really paves the innovation for a bunch of applications where developers can really leverage LLMs directly on smartphones. And we kind of see this directly with the AI, with the Pixel Pro 8 or 8 Pro. And this is the first smartphone that's really engineered directly for Gemini Nano. And they have direct Gemini Nano integrations with developer packets. They have an API already out. And this device is not just smart. It can also actually power a lot of their applications, such as real-time translation, text summarization, and directly within the mobile without having to use a separate API that's connected to a cloud. It can do all this compute directly on the Nano on the phone, which is really great innovation. So now we can really shift our focus towards the Google Gemini Pro. Think of this as another layer of Google's AI architecture, and that really bridges the connection between computational intelligence of Google's data centers to everyday application. And Google Gemini Pro is actually the brains behind Google Bard, which is a conversational agent, as you've already known. It's kind of rivaling to OpenAI's ChatGPT, where you can actually have conversations with this AI, and it's really powering that whole system. But the really great thing about Gemini Pro is it has an API that has been released a couple days ago, December 13th. And this API gives you developers across the world access to the model and all its capabilities. So the specifics of Gemini Pro's parameters kind of remain behind Google's door, but it's really poised to match the impressive GPT 3.5, which has around 175 billion parameters. So you can say it probably has around the same amount of parameters. So what does that mean for developers and enterprises? A powerhouse capable of advanced reasoning, natural language understanding, and a suite of cognitive abilities. This is not just on par with some of the AI benchmarks, but actually kind of exceeds some of the AI benchmarks that we see. And Google really suggests that Gemini Pro has excelled in tasks that are crucial to developers, such as brainstorming, writing, summarizing content. And in fact, Google has claimed that it has outperformed OpenAI's GPT 3.5 across 6 core benchmarks. And we'll talk about these benchmarks a little bit later. But these are not just about raw processing power. It's about its refined, nuanced, and contextually aware interactions based on its training data, and it's all its procedures here. And for developers, the release of the Google Gemini API is really amazing, and we'll be talking about how we can use that today, along with SingleStore and some other applications to really use this technology in order to take our applications to the next level. So the final version, Gemini Pro, is kind of the flagship model that has been released by Google, and it's kind of making a lot of waves in the AI circles today. And it's really its ability to comprehend and really comprehend complex information across text, code, and audio makes Gemini Ultra really the zenith of Google LLM technology. Statistically, Gemini Ultra has really outperformed the industry's benchmarks of around 30 to 32 tasks. And this is just really not incremental, it's kind of a significant leap. And it's meant to kind of rival GPT-4, GPT-4 Vision. But the whole thing about Gemini, right, is Google really emphasized how from the ground up they wanted to train these models with multimodal capabilities in mind. So when you think about some other models, right, you have GPT Vision, you have GPT-4, you have the Whisper API with OpenAI to talk to it, and you also have text to speech. But Google's whole goal here is to kind of combine all these multimodal aspects into one model. That's kind of what we're trying to see with Ultra. And it's really indicative of an AI that can really operate with a degree of precision that the score actually, so on the MMLU, which is actually a massive multi-task language understanding, which is kind of a benchmark for a lot of large language models today. This actually Google Gemini Ultra received a 90% accuracy score, which is kind of amazing. And it's kind of actually exceeding the precision of kind of human experts on a lot of these fields. So in this slide, we have a comparative analysis between Gemini Ultra, GPT-4, across several benchmarks. And starting with the massive multitask language understanding, MMLU, Gemini Ultra achieves a 90% score, and these are directly released by Google, which really shows the notable increase over GPT-4's 86.4. This benchmark really evaluates the model's ability to understand and generate responses across a broad spectrum of subjects. It had around 57 subjects, including STEM, humanities, and more. And the higher the score indicates a superior grasp of diverse and range of topics. Moving on to the realm of reasoning, the big benchmark really involves a complex and multi-step reasoning task. So these are tasks that kind of need multiple steps to actually completely understand. And Gemini Ultra actually really edges out with an 83.6 score compared to GPT-4's 83.1, which is, although it's a small margin, it's really indicative of Gemini Ultra's refined reasoning abilities and kind of how this whole industry is kind of pushing the boundaries on these benchmark scores. We have GPT-4 that was released a couple of months ago by OpenAI, and Google kind of beat these benchmark scores here. And I'm sure we're going to be seeing a big AI race, kind of as we're going to say, between these two companies and more companies that are trying to beat these benchmark scores, create more accuracy in a lot of these benchmarks here. The drop benchmark really assesses the reading comprehension, giving Gemini Ultra an 82.4% score, with GPT-4 only at 80.9. And it really shows that Ultra has a better accuracy and understanding of interpreting of text. The Hella Swag benchmark really tests the model's common sense reasoning. And Gemini Ultra kind of scores a little bit lower than GPT-4, but that's okay. And we have the next one, which is the mathematical reasoning in the GSM-8K benchmark. And this really involves the arithmetic problems. And actually, Gemini Ultra surpasses GPT-4 here with a 94.4% score and versus 92%. And this kind of shows more challenging math problems in the math benchmark, and also shows how Gemini Ultra can really do better on some math capabilities here. Finally, in code generation, which is a really popular use of large language models with Google, Microsoft Copilot, a lot of coding tools coming out that utilize these large language models to kind of help in code generation and code debugging, et cetera. Really benchmarks the human eval and the natural to code. And Gemini Ultra demonstrates a really solid performance with 74.4% and 74.9%. And this is compared to GPT-4 67 and 73.9%. And this analysis really presents a detailed picture of each model's strengths in text analysis, but we also want to understand their multimodal capabilities compared to each other. So as you can see, Gemini Ultra actually exceeds GPT Vision on every single image benchmark here. And in the multimodal domain, we have the MMMU, which is the image category, which tests multimodal and multidisciplinary college-level reasoning problems. And Gemini Ultra gets a 59.4% score, which is slightly ahead of GPT-4 Vision's 56.8. We also have natural image understanding, text-based image understanding, Doc VQA, which really shows its understanding of documents and structured documents, ability to parse the documents, and infographic VQA, which really requires an understanding and comprehension of infographic content. And Gemini actually scores 5% above GPT-4 in that category. And finally, Math Vista, which is a benchmark for mathematical reasoning in visual context, such as if you're showing it a mathematical formula with the vision or its ability to, take that image of a mathematical formula or a math problem, something like that, and actually interpret it. And Gemini Ultra achieves a score of 53%. GPT-4 Vision gets a 49.9%. And this really shows how 50% is not that great. It's out of 100%, obviously, and we're not right there with their perfect benchmarks yet for any means for either of these models. But it kind of shows that it's actually increasing, right? We have GPT-4, which is 49%. We have Gemini Ultra, which is the newest state-of-the-art model by Google, and that's 53%. I'm sure with GPT 4.5, GPT-5, and Google's later models with more training data, more training accuracy, we're going to see a lot more better scores in these benchmarks over time. But this really shows how Google's Gemini is actually getting a lot better than GPT-4 at some of these tests here. And finally, we have video and audio, and we have 4 tests here. So the VATEX test, which is really about English video captioning, and Gemini exceeds there. The perception test, which is about video question answering, and again, Gemini achieves there. And a couple other tests for audio about automatic speech translation and automatic speech recognition. And it seems to be where Gemini is actually outperforming Whisper in these cases, and Whisper is OpenAI's voice model. So let's just talk about a general understanding of what Gemini's capabilities are. So unlike previous AI models and large language models that were really unimodal in design, they required complex integration to mimic multimodal functionality, such as OpenAI. They have their GPT-4 Vision model, but they don't have voice directly integrated into the model. They don't have text-to-speech directly integrated in the model. They have separate models, but Gemini's models are really inherently architectured for multimodal from the ground up. And this is a fundamental design shift that really enables a seamless and processing integration of data across text, images, and audio without the need for really post-training stitching of a bunch of different models together. And Gemini's capabilities are really comprehensive, right? It's included ability to do sophisticated reasoning with text, with the model's ability to engage in problem-solving tasks. And its ability to understand text, images, and audio is not just a simply additive benefit, but it really allows for richer interpretations and interactions across multiple applications, right? And Gemini's advanced coding abilities really indicate a model that's not just reactive, but also can anticipate and generate in the realm of software development. And the graph displayed kind of there on Google's website kind of shows that it's MMLU, but benchmark, which is 90%, really shows it's a testament to its capability, but also sets a new standard for, as we talked about, more models in the future to kind of beat that standard as we see it. We had OpenAI get 86.3% or something like that, and we have Google getting 90%. And it kind of really shows how these models are improving over time. And I'm sure more models will be built from the ground up with multimodal abilities in mind. So today's session, we're really going to understand a hands-on segment where we kind of build applications using a Gemini Pro API. The API is really versatile, and it supports various programming environments such as Python, JavaScript for web applications, Kotlin for Android, and Swift for iOS, right? And obviously those mobile applications are going to be using the Gemini Nano integration as well. So we will be focusing using the Python API. So today we'll use the Python API. And to begin, the first thing you have to do is actually get the API key from the Google AI Studio. This really serves as your entry point to the Gemini environment. So the Google AI Studio is actually a new way of interacting with Google's generative AI models. It allows you to create new prompts, actually experiment around with these models before kind of change around the hyperparameters before actually using the API itself. But you can go to the studio and you can get your Python API. So what you would do is you would click create API new project, and you would just get that API from there. And this key will really be the cornerstone to your interaction with Gemini Pro, whether you're using JavaScript, Kotlin, Swift, whichever, this API key is what serves that function. So moving forward with the setting up of the Gemini API. So the next step is really install the necessary Python packages, right? And you're going to be running the pip install Google Generative AI package to really install the Google Generative AI package. And this will really give you access to Gemini's API functions and calls within your Python environment. So for an additional and enhanced interactive experience, we will be able to visualize the outputs for your API calls and install the IPython package with pip as well. And this will really be able to see the displayed outputs because actually Gemini is going to be outputting everything in kind of a markdown format. So with IPython, we're able to see exactly what the outputs are going to be looking like with markdown. So once all these packages are installed, you're able to start coding with Gemini's abilities. And so this is all in a notebook. I was doing a lot of these experiments and all these demos today that you'll be seeing today, all in a notebook. And this will be in a GitHub that Matt will be sharing with everybody. And you can follow along or you can check it out later if you want. But here we go. So here's a practical demonstration of Gemini Pro's output for formatting features. So using the model's content generation function, developers can really produce structured text responses that include markdown features like bold text and numbered lists, bullet points, anything that you would use in typical markdown format, right? And that's a great way of Gemini allowing you to integrate directly into your web applications or your READMEs or et cetera, anything where you could use markdown for actually formatted and great text that can be used. And this example shows a request for the model to really list 5 planets where there's an interesting fact about each. And the result is a neatly formatted markdown text that can really be used in various applications like documentation, educational tools, web content, anything where you can use this markdown format. And the markdown format is being displayed using the IPython markdown library, but you could be using, you could get the raw text by just doing response.txt. Just explaining the code a little bit here. So what we're doing is first loading the model in. So the model is the GenAI.generative model. You have a couple options here once there are more models going to be released, but right now you have access to Gemini Pro and Gemini Pro Vision. And these are the 2 models, and we'll talk about the Vision model a little bit later. But then once you have the model loaded in there, you can actually get a response from the model. And what you would do is model.generate content. And then that's where you would actually put in your prompt itself. And what the prompt here is actually listing 5 planets and interesting facts. And with the response.txt, we can see what the output is. So the Gemini Pro API really incorporates a safety mechanism that provides prompt feedback for each generated response, right? And this is accessible by the response.prompt feedback variable. This feature really allows and really evaluates the content across 4 defined safety categories and really ensures the model's output aligns with the ethical guidelines and usage policies of Google and their models. So the safety categories include explicit content, hate speech, harassment, dangerous content, and the feedback system really assigns a probability rating to each of these categories and indicates the likelihood of these content falling within these parameters. And if the feedback algorithm determines a high probability of a response being harmful based on these categories, the model is designed to automatically block such outputs and create an error. So it actually does not output something where it's not able to in a lot of these cases. If you've used ChatGPT or any of OpenAI's models, usually what it does is actually just directly outputs, hello, this is against my policies, or as a large language model, I cannot do this, etc. But in Google's case, and with their API, they actually just create an error, and you would have to do some error handling to ensure that your code doesn't stop because of this error. But based on this, if it falls in one of these categories, then it's going to trigger this error to block such an output. And this is really just to prevent any harmful substances that would really trigger any dangerous content from the model itself. And in response to, in contrast, normal queries can really be shown here, where there's probabilities actually negligible. If we see the second image here on the screen, how to center a div in HTML, it's just a simple prompt. Nothing dangerous in that prompt there, and all the safety ratings are just going to be negligible, and it's going to be able to output a response. This safeguard really ensures that developers can use the Gemini Pro API while maintaining a high standard of content safety and responsibility in all the responses, especially when you're interacting with customers. So then the next step is actually configuring hyperparameters with the generation config. So hyperparameters really play a crucial role in shaping the behavior of AI models during text generation. So in the Gemini Pro API, the generations underscore config object provides a suite of hyperparameters to tailor your output towards your requirements. So here are some of the hyperparameters that they have access to. So the candidate count allows you to specify how many outputs that you want the Google Gemini to create. Currently, this is limited to just one, but in the future, you'll be able to get multiple outputs and maybe just compare those outputs based on some benchmarks on what you want to display. Next is the stop sequences, and this is the parameter that actually specifies the model to conclude text generation upon reaching a certain text. And in this case, it's this full stop period. So in this case, when it reaches a period in the text generation, it's going to stop creating a response. This is vital for producing concise responses and avoiding run-on outputs. Obviously, in the prompt, you can say, hey, just do one sentence, but a lot of the times, this is a lot more better way of doing it because this is directly integrated into the Google Gemini hyperparameters. So the next step is, or the next hyperparameter, I would say, is max output tokens. And in this case, setting it to 20, and you can actually limit the model to generate a maximum of 20 tokens per response. This is very similar to the OpenAI GPT model parameters. If you're familiar, you could set the max amount of tokens you wanted to generate. And this can really, prevent like a verbosity or anything where it's creating too much text. And the next hyperparameter is top P. And this hyperparameter influences the selection of text by its probability. So a 0.7 setting biases the model towards a more probable words and creating more creative and coherence, balance. And that's kind of the whole thing about top P, right? You're kind of balancing this whole thing where it's creative outputs versus probable outputs. Probable outputs is closer to 0, and closer to 1 is more creative outputs. Top K, this limits the word choices to the top 4 most likely candidates. In this case, my top K is 4. And this allows you to create diversity without overwhelming the model in too many options. So it's not going to take as long to create responses as it's only limited to the top 4 most probable word choices. Temperature, this is another similar parameter to OpenAI. This allows you to change the randomness in the generated text, and allows you to have a higher temperature of 0.7 introduces more creativity in the responses, while lower values like 0.2, 0.1 allow you to make more probabilistic and like potentially less varied text. And these hyperparameters are really important to have granular control over the text generation. It allows developers to really fine-tune the balance between randomness, creativity, precision, and based on what the scenario is and what the application you're using it for. So now we talk about some of the multimodal abilities of Gemini and how you can code these. So Gemini architecture is fundamentally designed for multimodal tasks that we talked about. really seamlessly integrates with text and image analysis. And utilizing the Gemini Pro Vision model I talked about, you could actually set the model now in the generated model to Gemini Pro Vision. And this allows you to actually input text and images. And in the future, hopefully with Ultra and some of their other models, you could actually input audio and maybe video. We'll talk about how to do video. That's going to be our demo towards the end. But currently, it does not support video. The only formats it supports is text and images. So in practice, the model's capability is demonstrated through the Python code here. So we're using the Python imaging library, also known as PIL, which really is employed here to load the images directly from the working directory into Gemini. And the integration shows Gemini can process the visual data and produce a relevant response. So in this example, we're saying write 100 words from the picture. And in the picture, you can see there's a paraglider in some mountainous area. And it's able to interpret that and write its response from the markdown, from the response.txt variable. And you can see that here. And this illustration really shows Gemini's image analysis abilities and really highlights ability to generate content. And really ability to kind of generate descriptive content for visual media, aiding in content creation for storytelling and marketing and more. So expanding on its multimodal capabilities, we really demonstrate its ability here to create a file and do object counting. So the model can really interpret visual data and translate into kind of a structured format. And that's a really powerful tool if you think about it. So in this example, we're saying create a JSON file of the fruits and vegetables on the table and with their count present on the table. So we have a bunch of variety of images. And obviously with some state-of-the-art models you can use with just computer vision, you can do some object detection with some YOLO models or ImageNet, anything where you could actually access a big data set of a lot of these images. But directly integrating it into some sort of large language model allows you to do enhanced abilities, enhanced analysis here. And in this case, you can also do a structured analysis by creating it directly into a JSON file that kind of shows the direct counts of each of these elements in this image. And this feature really showcases Gemini's potential for inventory management, data organization, aiding with machine learning data sets, preparation, and much more. And this really this ability to convert visual information into structured data formats without manual intervention is really a powerful process. Before, you would have to use maybe a potential model to detect all these fruits and vegetables here, and then you would get the counts and manually have to write maybe a script to put them into a JSON file. But here directly, all integrated into this one query here, just with an image and a query, we're able to create this really powerful JSON file. So code generation is another amazing thing that you can do with the Gemini API. And this is really obviously become very popular with large language models, as you had GitHub Copilot come out, which is directly using GPT models directly within your IDE for code generation, code debugging. But Google really has emphasized how it can do advanced code generation. And code generation is something that's really useful for large language models to help you with debugging, with your scripts or creating scripts from scratch, or helping you expand your scripts to do a certain functionality. And for example, in this, I'm saying my prompt is write a Java program that can calculate my GPA. And it created a pretty good Java program right there. And you can see it pretty well formatted as well in this actual code format with the markdown text. So it's really great for showing you directly what it's looking like in its great formats, and also creating like very functional code that could be used in even a production level someday. So here's an example of Gemini Pro Vision Pro actually extending its multimodal abilities to do code generation and transforming visual designs to functional HTML and CSS code. So we have this example of this, this web page design that we're feeding into the model. And this really so we're feeding this web page design as the model. And we're saying, here is an image of a landing page. Please create an HTML and CSS code to replicate this website. And please format it in a code where I can copy paste it into an IDE. So this is what we got from the response. Obviously, it's not great. It's not like the best output you could get, but it did a pretty good job. It got the color almost right. It got like the general area of the elements. It got the automate your marketing and a few clicks. Obviously, the button is not the same. The email address is not in the same spot, and the bottom is not the same color. But you have a pretty good start. And this can be really great for rapid prototyping, helping developers really convert visual ideas into tangible products. So, for example, if you're just drawing up a website design on your computer, on Figma, on like even a piece of paper, right? You can feed that directly into a multimodal language model like Gemini Pro Vision, and you can get a response that's not like production ready, obviously, but really great for just prototyping and getting to the next step very fast. And so this is just what the code looks like. This was the visual output, and this was the input and the visual output. And the code here itself, it created HTML code, also created CSS code, and I put that directly into an IDE to show what this looks like. So it's great for code generation, especially with the added capabilities of multimodal language models. So now we'll talk about, Google's Gemini offers a really specialized chat version. It's kind of akin to OpenAI's GPT models that really facilitates a continuous conversation flow. If you know ChatGPT or any of those types of conversation flows, this is kind of similar to that. So this model retains a history of exchanges, allowing for context-rich dialogue that really ensures the interaction builds between the last context and creates a more meaningful conversation flow between a user. So through the chat model start chat method, a chat session is really initiated and with the capacity to really remember previous messages. And this is really powerful, right? The contextual memory enables the model to really provide more accurate and relevant responses, to follow up on questions, and really a natural flowing conversation. And in this example, so I'm showing how the code is working here. So we do we load the model here. We're using just the regular model, not the vision model. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to say chat model.start chat. And what that's going to do is going to start saving the history of every response that we're going to be using. And the response is going to be actually not doing it directly to the model itself now, but we're actually using the chat variable here and sending a message directly into that. And with that, you can still use the response.text variable to get what the response is. And as you can see here, I have give me a one-line quote from a random person and their name. And in this example, it said, if you're not willing to learn, no one will help you. No one can help you. And that's Henry Ford, right? And the next thing I say, who is this person and where was he or she born? Explain in 2 sentences. And without having that additional context from that last message with this chat model start chat, we would not be able to actually have that additional context here, and it would not be able to answer this question. But since it does have that chat history, it's able to get their response. And the chat's version ability to really retain references to past interactions really paves the way for applications such as virtual assistants, customer support bots, interaction learning tools. And this capability is really crucial in creating engaging user experience. And obviously, we've had it with GPT for a while now, but it's great that some of these other large language models and large language platforms like Gemini are including this chat capability that can really revolutionize this human-like interactions with the conversation flows. And Gemini's chat LLM really stands out for its ability to handle series of questions and statements in a coherent manner, really reflecting nuances and progression of an ongoing conversation. And finally, we have this another thing here where with the chat, we can also access a variable called history, and we can see the entire history in parsed format here, and we can see the user's responses and the model's responses as well. So Gemini includes optical character recognition, which is really, really awesome that it does, which allows it to read and interpret text within images. This is really, functionality is really important, really useful in a lot of scenarios where there's a lot of text in an image or scanned document or a situation where there's live text needing to be translated. The integration with OCR within Gemini really leverages the model's advanced reasoning capabilities. So we've had OCR models for a while now that can really take text from images directly. But the combination with Gemini, not only able to read from the images, but also understand it, respond to it, and really provide contextually relevant information is really a great tool. For instance, when presented with an image of a parking sign, Gemini can decipher the rules and provide actionable information, such as permissible parking times during a day. Obviously, we've probably had other models in the past that could do something like this, where it can actually read the text, but then to do the advanced reasoning capabilities, that's where Gemini comes in. And this is really similar to GPT Vision as well. So the OCR feature is really vital for developing applications that kind of require immediate text analysis and decision-making based on visual information. And here's also an example of handwriting OCR. So it can take this handwritten text here, a lot of these formulas, and convert it directly into latex or any format where you can actually put it into a computer. And this is really amazing, where you can actually take handwriting and actually interpret it directly with the Gemini API. So Gemini Pro also can be really useful in scientific research. So this can be really useful with the OCR, especially with the Gemini's advanced reasoning capabilities. In this scenario here, we have a question of how we can optimize an LSTM model, and gives a diagram of it. And Gemini is able to create these pretty good responses on how to actually do that. And utilizing OCR and advanced reasoning, Gemini is really able to understand the diagram and create these valuable responses in a lot of scenarios. So Gemini can also really change customer service. So large language models that include multimodal components, such as Google Gemini, GPT-4 Vision, can really revolutionize automated customer service. And currently, automated customer service bots are slow, unresponsive. You've probably dealt with them on some random websites for customer service, right? They're very slow. They can only understand key phrases that it's programmed to do. But using Gemini or large language models in general can really bring an advanced reasoning to helping a customer with their issue, and getting vision and multimodal aspects in that arena is actually even more beneficial. In this example on the bottom of the screen, we have this user got this product in the mail, which is completely damaged, and we're telling it to act as a customer service agent. And the assistant was saying here, I'm sorry to hear that. I can help you get a refund. Please take photos. And it can create a more meaningful conversation for a lot of these scenarios, where you can actually replace a human or a lot more efficiently. Obviously, we have these customer support bots right now, but a lot of them are not very good. So this can really help that, and especially with multimodal abilities. So CAPTCHA is another standard security measure online, and it's really designed to differentiate between human users and automated bots. So GPT Vision incorporates a security vision that really prevents it from deciphering CAPTCHAs. As you can see here, I cannot assist in CAPTCHAs or similar tests, as they're meant to distinguish between humans and software. But I fed that same image into Google Gemini, and it lacks this restriction. As you can see, it said the characters above a TD4EV2. So while this demonstrates Gemini's really great OCR capability, it raises a concern regarding its potential misuse. Obviously, the whole point of these CAPTCHAs are to differentiate between online bots and prevent bots from going on these websites. So another example here is personal identification. So GPT Vision was not able to answer questions about pictures of people. However, when I fed the same image of this image into Google Gemini, and answered with there was no flag being raised in the response.prompt feedback, and it just actually responded with who it is. So this kind of shows the differences in policies OpenAI and Google have on what's considered safe AI. With the example with our CAPTCHA and our personal identification, they might have different policies, and that's directly reflected into these models. So now we can get into Google Gemini with video. So this is actually kind of a hot topic, because Google Gemini released their model, and in their demo video, they actually had a video that kind of really showed real-time capabilities with video, but that turned out to be kind of a little bit of a doctored video. And it was not actually completely true, and a lot of people were upset with it, but I'll just show you what this video looks like first.
Hey, Ayush, is this supposed to have sound or no?
Yes, it is, but it's okay. I
Okay,
think it should be able to understand without the sound.
true, true.
But that's just a general video. It kind of shows Google Gemini's video that they released. But turned out this video was not exactly real. They kind of faked a little bit of the aspects to kind of show like kind of the capabilities of would be in the future. But today I'll be showing how you can actually use Google Gemini with video and a kind of a small demonstration here. So in order to do this, obviously Google Gemini does not have video input, but we need to continuously capture frames and store them. And we can do this by running a capture.py script that converts the frame into a PIL image, converts that PIL image into an OpenCV image, and then access that frame directly into save that frame directly into a JPEG into a directory that we can access. And here's a code for that. Basically, it's just a while loop that goes to the video input and creates the frame and saves it to the directory with PIL and OpenCV. You will all have access to this code on the GitHub as well as the notebook. But this kind of shows the next step where we get Google Gemini to actually do the frame-by-frame analysis. So as we save the current frame JPEG into the capture.py, what we want to do is actually analyze that frame directly with the Gemini model. And the analyze image function in this case is using what we've been doing all session long, which is using the Gemini Pro vision model, prompting it to output 2 sentences about what it sees in the frame. And in the main method, we have a while loop that continuously awaits Gemini's responses about the video and prints them to the console. And I'll go into like a live demo right after this, but really enhancing Google Gemini is really important. And we can do this by doing retrieval augmented generation. And we've had a couple of webinars here on SingleStore about retrieval RAG. And we'll have a couple more in the future, I'm sure. But RAG is really an advanced technique that really synergizes the strengths of large pre-trained models such as Gemini Pro, and it really does external search and retrieval mechanisms. And there's 3 kind of steps here that we have in RAG that can really enhance the capabilities of large language models that kind of pull a corpus of documents during the generation process. So the retrieval step, that when presented a question or prompt, the RAG model kind of first finds that document that's relevant to that current prompt, and it's done using the retrieval mechanism, and often really done with the vector representation of documents and the query. The generation step then takes these passages, puts them into the generative model along with the original query, and the final step is to train the entire system that can be fine-tuned with this downstream task. But enhancing a model such as Google Gemini, RAG can be really, really useful for this. So enhancing Gemini with RAG and SingleStore is another great way to do it. So you can integrate SingleStore directly into the RAG model, and pairing SingleStore and RAG and AI applications can really create a formidable duo in real-time data processing and response generation. Obviously, Google Gemini Pro right now is not the most state-of-the-art model. It's Google Ultra. But if you want to have more context and analysis in your responses directly curated towards customers, that can be a really great way to do it with RAG and SingleStore. And SingleStore really stands out for its high-speed data retrieval capabilities, which is really essential to the RAG model and requires really immediate access to the latest data and generating responses. And this seamless integration really allows for beneficial scenarios and AI that can really understand and really reply to complex scenarios when it needs data streams for instant insights on, if you have an example where you have customers talking about their stock portfolios or any other area where they need a lot of data about the user, they can use this using RAG to actually retrieve those documents directly, feed them into the prompt, and SingleStore really facilitates advanced search capabilities like vector semantic search, keyword matching, which are really integral to the RAG retrieval step. And this capability really ensures that the search is not based on keyword frequency, but also on the contextual meaning of the query, leading to more accurate and relevant data retrieval. And SingleStore for RAG is really great. But now we can get into a little bit of a demo here. So I think we can still see my screen. So here is a demo. So here is our video.py and our capture.py. We went over both of these in the demo, and these files will be sent out. So we have our capture that's going to be running directly to run on this video file. So we have this basketball game here, for example, and we're going to run this file. And what this is going to do is it's going to say Gemini is watching, and it's watching the game as it does, and it's going to take in that frame at the first it's going to take the first frame it sees, and what it's going to do, it's going to feed that directly into this analyze image function. And once that is done analyzing, it will create a response. And Gemini Pro API is a little bit slow, but here's the response. The video shows a basketball game between the Houston Rockets and the LA Clippers. The Rockets are on offense trying to score a basket. And I can leave that demo running while we do some more questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Ayush. So feel free to post your questions to the Q&A button at the bottom. Couple of quick notes. Number one, everyone will get the recording. We'll send that out automatically after announcing the AirPods winner. Number two, Ayush, someone noted in the chat that there's an API mentioned in the GitHub. So I don't know if that's okay or if we should like refresh that or anything. Do you plan on doing that already, maybe?
So is there something in my GitHub and that they found?
That's what was said in the chat. So maybe something to check after.
Okay, yeah, I will check on that. I
just
think everything within the GitHub should be there. There might be some libraries that might need to install to run the code. But I'll just put that instructions directly in the README after this so that they can do that.
Sounds good. Yeah, I just didn't want to, I wanted to make sure that you weren't getting charged for other people's activity. So figured I'd mention it. In terms of questions, there's a lot. One of them is, have you run into any sort of token limits in your usage thus far, or can you speak to that question at all?
So I haven't reached any token limits yet, but Google does have a token limit. I think it's around some amount of API tokens per hour or per day. There is a token limit, but I haven't reached anything yet, especially with using this video. So I think currently everything is free with their API, but I'm sure with all the other models they released with Ultra, etc., it'll be able to use with with more, if you pay for more credits or something like that, you can get more tokens. But right now everything is free, and there is a token limit, but I haven't reached it yet.
Good stuff. There was a question, I'll pose it anyways, even though I feel like you showed some like mixing of modalities, but the question was about, have you done much with blending inputs or blending outputs like text, video, and image into a single prompt or anything like that?
When you mean blending inputs, do you mean like putting both like a text image or text input and a like image input directly into a prompt?
That's how I'm interpreting the question.
Yeah, so let me go back to the slide, or I can do it directly in the code here. So as you can see in this analyze image function, we have our input would be directly with the vision model generate content, right? And what's happening here is you can actually parse in a list of the different inputs that you want into the model. So for example, we have the text input here, which is please output 2 sentences about what you see in the video frame, and then you do a comma, and then you can image. And actually, you can actually do multiple images as well. So you can list in with Python what you want to be inputting into the function or into the model itself. And that's how you can do text and image inputs at once.
Good stuff. We're getting close on time here. Maybe one or two more questions. I see this one, somebody asked about what do you think about using Gemini to solve scientific research questions? I can't fully verify this, but I heard somebody told me at least yesterday that somebody used Gemini to be able to predict heart attacks using like retina scans or something. So I can't fully speak to that, but somebody did tell me, and if that's the case, it's very, very cool. I don't know if Ayush, if you have seen anything regarding like the science use case.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much about the science use case. Obviously, the API just came out pretty recently, but I'm sure there has been a lot of things going on with math and a lot of math reasoning. I've seen a lot of math reasoning with this. It's doing, as you could saw, like there was a great benchmark that showed the math reasoning score. And research, I'm sure, is another great category where a lot of people will be exploring in the next couple coming weeks, as they keep exploring this API. And I'm sure with the Ultra API as well, that'll come out early 2024, as we'll see, should have even more reasoning in terms of research abilities.
Awesome, good stuff. Can you, would you mind pulling up your slide deck and going to the second to last screen? You might even need to like hit refresh on your.
Is it this one?
Yes, that's it. Okay, so somebody asked during the session about benchmark reports, and I've got a Slack going with the marketing team. And while this session has been going, I just got this good news that SingleStore, some rankings were released, and SingleStore has been recognized as a top vector database, the #2 on Trust Radius and the #3 on PeerSpot. And then you can see some nice notes in here that were left by customers, like Siemens saying fastest database ever, Ferrari of a database, etc. So wanted to share that. Feel free to do your own research and comparisons, but I love SingleStore, so hopefully you will too. And then I mentioned before I do the AirPods winner, I wanted to also mention that you know, a lot of people have been asking about this real-time RAG, real-time retrieval augmented generation. If you click to the last slide, Ayush, highly recommend that you join us on January 8th, just in terms of how can SingleStore help provide additional context to these AI chatbots, be it on different types of data formats, different data sources. SingleStore is really, really good in that regard. So please register for that. Our RSVP link is in the chat. Hope to see you there after the holidays. And then the announcement you've been waiting for, today's AirPods winner, sorry, I should say, goes to, and I'm very sorry if I butcher this, Nadina Busuluk, who works at Procter & Gamble. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us. If that's not you, don't give up. Thank you for joining. There's going to be one more AirPods given out by the end of the day to anyone who has tried out Ayush's demo. So again, I put that in the chat. I'll also put it in the email. We're going to be sending out the recording of this if you want to go through the recording while you play with that GitHub, but try it out and hopefully you'll be that last winner that we'll be announcing later today. Thank you, Ayush, for an awesome presentation and demo. Thank you to our audience for joining us. Have a great rest of your day and happy holidays, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.